Hi everyone, welcome to another live stream. I hope everyone is doing well. I hope everyone is doing good. I hope you guys had a very wonderful day. For those of you who your day is starting, wherever you are listening to me from across the world, I hope you are good. I pray that you have a very wonderful day. And yeah, we're about to start this live reaction. You guys already know what we are going to react to. And yeah, but let me state it anyways. We are going to react to Jordan Peterson's reaction to his to the decision from his court ruling, right? So to give kind of like a background to what is going on, I think earlier this year or probably last year, Jordan Peterson had uh, well, it's best let me let him just to know. I don't know. I'm not good at explaining stuff like that, except it's written down and then I have to explain what is written. But essentially, the faculty of, I don't know if they call it faculty or department of medicine or psychology in in his university where he's teaching in Canada, kind of want to suspend his license, but the suspension will come if he refused to submit to a re-education training, a social media training to teach him how to handle social media, because according to the college, he has not handled social media as a professional, so he has to sit with experts and they have to re-educate him on how to use social media, because according to them, his conduct on social media does not reflects poorly on the faculty, essentially. And what he's been accused of saying that, goes contrary to the ethics of his profession is that he's criticizing the government of Canada, essentially. So political statements that he made, political statements that he made were the things that amount to disgracing the faculty of psychology in the university where he's a professor. Anyway, so that is what. So they went to court essentially, and the court upheld the decision of the faculty and said, yes, Jordan Peterson has freedom of speech, but apparently, it's one funny thing how some of these judges, especially we see it every time, even in Nigerian cases, any case, you see them just show just how they care little to nothing about the law. There are activist judges everywhere. You see them everywhere, even in Nigeria, everywhere. You just see them. They will cite one thing that they believe is the law, and then just cite something that goes contrary to what they just uphold as the law. They'll be like, "Yeah, you have freedom of speech, but under certain circumstances, you don't." So that's what we are going to be talking about today, and I'm happy that each and every one of you, wherever you are joining me from, I'm happy to see all your comments right now. I can see people from France. I can see people from CA. Is it Canada or California? I don't know. I can see people from Mexico. I can see people. Someone is asking if is there a lag, guys? Are you guys experiencing any lag? Let me know. You consider interesting and fascinating and insightful. And also the super chats, they are very, very important. I look forward to them in this live stream, and that's how you can support the channel. And with that being said, let's go straight into the video, and let's not waste so much time. But before we do that, I just want to start by saying what I think about the whole censorship thing. I put a poll, and the question is, what do you think about censorship in the West? Is it a problem? Is it a small problem? Is it a growing problem? Is it the end of Western democracy? My major fear when it comes to the general consensus right now, and it's not just Western society, right? Just globally, is that we now live in a world where we have people who freely are choosing to be enslaved, right? There is being enslaved where it is not your choice. You didn't sign up for it, right? Like what happened like 200 years ago and what we've known throughout history, where people unwillfully are stolen from a particular land or kidnapped from a particular land and taken to another land to work against their will for the profit of another, where they benefit little to nothing from the entire transaction, and it is done without their consent, right? Right now, we are in the age where people are willfully, knowingly giving away their freedom. And they're like, you know what? Because I want safety, or because I want to, I want my opponent to suffer, or I want somebody to suffer, I will freely and willfully hand over my freedom to somebody else and give someone else a figure that I cannot trust, that should never be trusted. I'm going to hand over power to that figure just because I want to punish somebody, or because I want to feel safe, or for whatever reason they come up with. That is the trend. That is the trend. The trend is that Western society is giving up on democracy. Some people can democratically choose to be undemocratic. People can freely choose to be enslaved, like I said earlier. And that is what we are seeing in the West, where people have freedom of speech and they are like, no, we don't like the outcome of free expression. And we are freely asking the government to silence people. Even though, and I feel the reason why that is not really because people understand what they are doing. It's a case of these people don't know what they are doing. People don't understand the full effect. One of the deceptions that is pushing this movement, this current trend, is that people feel censorship is not going to come back to haunt them. There's this belief that it's just my opponent that I'm silencing. It's just people who make me feel bad that I'm going after. This law will never apply to me. It will never come back to haunt me. It's just them. Like, they are not human beings with ulterior motive who just want power for the sake of it and don't really care about the average individual. The trend in Western society today is to tend to believe that the government cares and that they should be trusted. So people are willing to just give everything over to them and be like, yeah, keep us safe, or secure my feelings, or go after my enemy, and they don't realize that one is the government is not your friend. They're not your friends. They're not there to help you. They're there to help themselves. The institution lives and feeds itself. It exists for itself. It does not exist for you. It's like every other job, every other establishment. The establishment, yes, they provide you with goods and services. Sometimes they help you with basic needs and stuff that you need. But the reason why that business came into being is for itself, right? A private enterprise wants to make profit. Because he wants to make profit, he's going to make his product effective so that people will patronize it. Services will want to be top-notch so that people will patronize it. Nobody is doing any of that because really, really they care about you. Some may say they do, but when it comes down to it, no matter how much a company cares about you, it wants to make profit. And if you cannot make profit caring about you, it won't. The same thing goes to the government. The way the government makes a profit is by getting holding more power, wielding more power, getting bigger and bigger, and sustaining itself off of your allegiance, your submission, and your money, which they do through taxes. That is essentially what they exist to do. So they are always looking for opportunity to expand. Just like every business is looking for opportunity to expand, the government is also looking for opportunity to expand. And how they do it is, take advantage of crisis, look for opportunities to take a particular right and benefit that privilege that you have as a human being created in the image of God. So once you have God-given rights, the government want to convince you and say, if you want to stay safe, maybe you should give up this one and give up this one. And when you give up this one, we will help you. And when we help you, we'll grow bigger. And when we grow bigger, we'll demand more money from you. And we keep growing bigger and growing bigger and growing bigger and coming up with more programs and taking more of your rights in the name of helping you. And they're not really helping. And that is what the government is all about. But people fail to realize that. And they think the government is on my side. It is not. It exists for itself. It will always exist for itself. That is why the average individual needs to understand this. You need to understand this so that it is not. I don't know why Westerners find it. I don't know. It's like a sentiment that I notice in the West. Like in Nigeria or in many African countries, it's not a problem. Everybody knows this to be true. That you can't, you shouldn't, and it is stupid to trust the government. Like, it's just stupid. Like, didn't your mother teach you when you were growing up that you should never trust anybody? How much more an institution that exists for its own self? Is it because you voted them in? Somehow you think they are your guys? They are not. They are not. And you should be ever ready to withdraw your support for a government that does not represent you, even though you voted them in. That you voted for a government does not mean you die with them, when obviously they are killing you. No. No. When you vote somebody and you realize the person I voted for is bad, you don't do this, what will I call it? This thing where you are like, okay, well, since I voted this person and I have to, no. You can be like, no, I made a terrible decision. I'm not voting this person ever again, and I do not support every nonsense this person is. Not you double down and be like, nah, my vote shows you're looking for something to convince you that he's doing a good job when clearly he's not. The government is not your friend. It's a tool for you as the individual. They should serve you. They are there to serve you. If they are not serving you, you kick them out. It is not a bad advice to tell you as an individual, don't trust the government. Don't trust them. Always be skeptical about them. Always double check, triple check. Let them know that you don't trust them. The government will be more effective if they know that you don't trust them. And suddenly it's being seen as undemocratic to not trust your government. No. It is only in monarchies and dictatorship that you are compelled and required to show allegiance to the government. Unquestionable, blind allegiance to the government. In a democracy, you are supposed to constantly criticize, distrust the government. And anybody who tells you otherwise is not a democratic individual. And that is what they are doing with the whole freedom of speech thing, is that Westerners are like, no, I want the government to protect my feelings. Somebody who is trans wants the government to ensure that everybody agrees with his opinion about trans ideology. Somebody who is pro-climate change and believes that the world is ending next week wants the government to affirm that. Somebody who affirm that. Somebody who whatever notion and idea that you believe, you feel if I can get the right person there, is going to ensure that nobody else disagrees with me. And that is how you feel is the way to keep you safe, to ensure that what you want comes to be, is if you can get the right person elected and let that person force whatever your views are on every other person. That is the problem we have. That's the problem we have in society today, especially in the West, where people feel that is the way forward. It is not. It is not. And that is my opening rant. Okay? Don't trust the government. Do not trust the government. And let's...
Hey, Mick, how are you?
His intro is kind of great. It's daily why I have a really good media
Dad,
team.
nice to see you.
Hey, Mick, how are you doing?
I'm not doing too bad. How are you?
Good, actually. All things considered, I'm in Milwaukee, looking forward to the presidential debate tonight. That's fun. You know, I'm perplexed, I would say, about the situation in Canada. I've been thinking about it this morning. As you know, the court that we appealed the College of Psychologists' decision to decided that the college it's within the college's purview to stop me from having any political opinions, as far as I can tell. The decision, which I posted on Twitter and will post in the description of this video, starts out by making a case for the fundamental reality of freedom of speech for Canadians in Canada, and then says, but, and that's always a bad start when you're talking about freedom of speech, but apparently the college has the right to decide that I can be re-educated forcibly with the risk of my license, essentially because I made political statements that the members of the college don't agree with. And those opinions involve two criticisms of Justin Trudeau, one criticism of his chief of, and then my objection on Joe Rogan to the climate apocalyptic fear-mongering that idiot tyrants are foisting on the general population. Now, apparently that makes me unprofessional and a disgrace to the profession, such that I am now going to be required, the college can go ahead with this, to put me into a re-education program with their so-called social media experts. And that's also, by the way, a profession that does not exist, until I learn my lesson, whatever that is, regardless of how much time that takes, by their judgment. Or they can take my license away. And so
let's just pause here for a minute and just let's talk, ladies and gentlemen. Let's talk, guys. Like, it is okay if you hate Jordan Peterson. It is okay. I won't blame you. Everybody have reason to hate people. Like, it's okay if you really have deep-seated hatred in your heart for Jordan Peterson. It is okay if everything that comes out of his mouth annoys the living hell out of you. It is okay if you feel people like this, anytime they open their mouth, you feel like shooting yourself in the head. It is okay. But you know what is not okay? What is not okay is for you to see what is happening to him and be like, oh, well, it is well deserved. That is not okay. And I'll tell you why I think and I believe strongly that that is not okay. It will happen to you. That is the thing about government censorship. It will happen to you. Government censorship will not end. It will not stop until it happens to you. That's one thing people think about censorship, like I was saying earlier. You believe that it will start with someone and end with that person. That is always the idea, because so many people are heavily short-sighted. Painfully short-sighted, I will add. So short-sighted to see that, to foresee what will happen when a trend starts. It will not end until it is including you, until you are involved, until you are a victim. It will not end. So you can look at this and laugh at it and be like, oh yeah, good riddance to bad rubbish. But it will happen to you. It will happen to you. Don't think for a second, oh, I am a good, moral, upright citizen, and there is no way this censorship craze will affect me because it is my side who is doing the censorship. One thing we know about the left is how desperate they are to consume anything and anybody, including their own. Okay? The left, the craze of the left is like a ruthless Rottweiler. When it is done consuming every other person, it will destroy the owner. When there is nothing else to devour, it will devour the owner. That is not a dog you want to trust. It is the same thing with censorship. Censorship is not a dog you want to trust. It will eat you as well. And here is the sad part, especially for those who hate Jordan Peterson and think that censorship is helping them. When that dog turns to devour you, nobody, believe me, nobody will step in to save you. Because everybody that will have objected to it have been devoured by it. If this does not scare you, if this does not giving you a moment to reflect and think and be like, no, this is bad, then you are most likely going to learn the hard way that censorship has not helped anybody. In Nigeria, we've had leaders who imprisoned others, dictators who imprisoned others, and later down the line, they themselves were imprisoned. We've had leaders who punished others, and later on, they themselves were punished by the same system that they used to punish others. The scripture said, I know I like to quote the Bible a lot, but I believe it is filled with so many wisdom. Even if you don't believe in the God of the scripture, you cannot deny the truth therein. And one of those truths is this: those that live by the sword will die by the sword. It is inevitable. So be ready.
the court says, well, of course you have freedom of speech, Dr. Peterson, but because you're a professional, you're bound by your professional organization. And apparently they're not bound, even though they're a government organization fundamentally. Apparently they're not bound by that fundamental constitutional axiom. And
that is funny. Jordan Peterson, you are bound by the regulation of your profession, but your profession is not bound by the regulation of a liberal society. So your profession, your professional body does not exist within the framework of a liberal society. It exists within its own framework. So Yeah, you have freedom of speech, and you're also bound by the ethics of your profession, even though the ethics of your profession, so to speak, contravenes the overarching principle of society, right? As if a profession can go against the fundamental principle of a liberal society. A profession is allowed to do that, really.
So that shows
Even organizations that operate with, let's say, uh, uh, privacy. They have this principle of privacy. Like when you work in the FBI, you work in all these 3-letter organizations where there's a level of secrecy to the things they do. When you realize secrecy, silence, don't say anything. Under certain circumstances, you can step forward with an information and you'll be protected as a whistleblower. How much more you're a psychologist, right? That is what you are. You are a psychologist. You belong to a body of psychologists. And then you cannot make political statement because somehow that affects you as a psychologist. So a psychologist cannot make political statements, cannot offer opinion about anything else. If I'm a psychologist, I can't say anything about. You may be of the opinion, and sometimes I feel that way about Jordan Peterson, that he uses his qualification as a psychologist to talk about areas that he's not well versed in. That is a fair criticism. It is fair criticism. But it does not mean, therefore, that his body, his professional body should therefore silence him and say, don't talk about those things. Like, as a psychologist, the only thing you have to talk about is when it has to do with psychology. Really? That is the only thing you have to talk about in public? Then where is the body that is supposed to revoke whatever license Neil deGrasse Tyson has? Because he has used his position as an astrophysicist to talk about things that he knows literally nothing about. He does that on every podcast, on every interview, and nobody is saying a damn thing about it. Okay, of course, it's the United States, it's Canada. You want to tell me that there are no professors in Canada that are doing the same thing? That are using their position in one thing to talk about something else that they know little to nothing about? And based on that, you're going to revoke somebody's license, and then the court, man, that for me, this is really scary. And it is anybody who's looking at this trend and is like, oh well, it doesn't matter, and you are not concerned about this. There's wisdom is far away from you if you're that kind of person. I know it sounds like an insult, but honestly, it is an understatement. It is really an understatement. Let me go to the comments and see what some people are saying. This is from Jacob Embry. Tyson says some days he feels 75% female. Yeah, and I reacted to the video. Exactly. What does his idea of biology have to do with astrophysics? He does that, and he's allowed to say that. And this is from John. My brother tried to warn me about that video, about that cop, and I regret ignoring him, and I don't even know what you're talking about. And this is from, he said, this is from Garrett. He said, that happens in Canada a lot, and that is problematic. It is really problematic that this happens a lot in Canada. A lot, especially in Canada, you know. And honestly, I feel for my Nigerian brothers and sisters whose usual escape destination when they want to escape the hardship of Nigeria is usually Canada. And I'm like, are you guys aware of this trend, or you don't care about it? You think it will not affect you? You know, where are you going to raise your kids? Is it going to be one of these Canadian liberal schools where LGBTQ is a must? Is that it? Is it really worth it for how much, whatever it is? And let's not even go to the 32% tax. But all of it is just to say, on a good day, I don't think any foreigner will want to be in Canada. Based on what this trend that is going on, it should worry you. It should really worry you. Let's continue.
shows you, all you Canadians who are listening, and everyone outside of the country who might be the least bit interested in Canada, that shows you exactly what our bloody Constitution is worth. And if Canadians are so
It's almost non-existent. I mean, the Constitution therefore does not uphold free speech, or maybe the judicial system does not. The liberal society has gone to like as in disintegrated in my opinion. It's no longer a liberal society. A liberal society where you're not allowed to criticize the government. Is it really a liberal society? In fact, in some monarchical systems, some people had the right to criticize the government without facing this kind of repercussion. You know.
Daft that they don't think that that's a problem. Well, they're going to figure it out over the next 15 years because there's absolutely.
And as usual, when people sound the alarm of these things early, many people take it for granted because, of course, people don't have foresight. It's one of the problems that I think young people, especially, and most people in the West, lack seriously. Foresight, where you are unable to foresee where the path you are on will lead you to. You know.
No excuse for this. So that's what I'm thinking. Now, there's part of me that's thinking, well, look, Peterson, the College of Psychologists is after you. You've taken it to court. Now the judges have decided that you're wrong. Maybe you're wrong. And I think, well, I expressed political sentiment and I'm actually informed. And so for the life of me, I can't see how I'm wrong. I think I have a responsibility to say what I think, and I think many people agree with that, and I think the fundamental consequence of that around the world has been massively beneficial to people. So I think, number one, what the hell? And number two, bring it on and see what happens, because I will make absolutely every bit of this public in a way that the college and the courts can hardly even imagine. So away we go. So that's how I'm doing.
That's how you're doing. Okay, but good.
Yeah, there's somebody who also said in one of the comments that earlier comments before the live stream started, who said, I pity the person who is going to, I pity people the people in charge of this re-education program, those who will be lecturing Jordan Peterson as social media experts. I really pity them. It's like Mr. T said, I pity the fool. Like, I really pity that fool. He's going to realize, or he or she is going to realize that the job he or she has been given is not a very good one. They will rethink the decision. Who do you want to re-educate? Jordan Peterson. All right. It's going to be fun, I guess. You think you're going to humiliate him? Okay. Good luck.
Yeah, but good. You know, I mean, the court decision was worse than I thought it would be. I was already pessimistic. I figured the court would take the coward's way out. And
exactly, that's what they did.
Upbraid the college for procedural inadequacy, because one of the things the college did, which is just beyond comprehension as far as I'm concerned, is pursue these complaints that were put forward by people distributed all over the world, who then claimed in writing falsely to be my clients.
Think about it. An allegation is made against you, and people making the accusations are falsely making the accusations, lying about their relationship with you, and yet a court upholds the decision made based on those false accusations that are verifiably false, knowingly false, evidently false. Yet it didn't change the outcome of the court's decision. God help Canada.
In fact, they were never my clients, and not only were they not my clients, they had nothing to do with anyone who was ever a client of mine. And so I figured at least the court would say, well, you know, of course you have the right to police professionals because you're a professional governing body, but they didn't even do that. They just basically said, well, of course you have the right to freedom of speech, except when it comes to, let's say, political opinions. So, you know, then what right do you have at all?
I mean, it goes in line with what Justin Trudeau said one time. Oh, protest is nice, except when you're protesting me, essentially. Oh, protest is right. It's the same thing Jacinda Ardern, or whatever it is, the former New Zealand Prime Minister, said this year in her, is it this year or last year, but her recent UN speech. That's what she said. In one part of the speech, she was like, what was the thing she said? She said, We all advocate for protest. Protest is a wonderful thing. People are allowed to protest. One of the ways we've been able to achieve progress in the last few years is through protest. Protest is fine, it's great, but sometimes it can be used to spread harmful misinformation and disinformation. Explain, madam. Meaning sometimes we may disagree with the protest. Sometimes we may not agree with the protest, as if all those times, those protests that she's referring to that happened in the past, when they were being made, the people were not, like the general consensus then was not against such protests. As if people did not dislike such protests back then. As if the general public was in favor of many of those protests when they started. That was not the case. People had to, through this protest, make a case and change public consciousness with regard to so many of these issues that are now undisputable, obvious human rights provisions right now, right? Like abortion, like women's right to vote, and gay rights and what have you. Back then, you had to make a case for it, and nobody silenced these protesters, or at least would think that silencing them would have been a good thing, especially those who are now pushing for silencing their opposition. And yet these leaders cannot see that they are playing the bad guys here. They are acting exactly like people who they criticized back then. Now they feel, no, protest is good. Protest is a very wonderful thing. It's a great thing. Everybody should be allowed to protest. But if you are against me, in fact, Justin Trudeau said that to use protest to change government policies is wrong, is problematic, is concerning. Yes. Protest is not to change, it's to create awareness, not to change. Create awareness about what? About policies you want changed. West today.
And, it's terrible, Michaela, because I know perfectly well from talking to many physicians in particular, but also lawyers and psychologists, that no one in Canada, arguably, and this is also extremely strange, it's surreal, there's no one in Canada except me that's actually in a position to fight this, because it's hyper expensive, and I don't know if my insurance will cover it. It's hyper expensive. It's stressful. It's complex. It's time consuming. It could involve the suspension of my license. And there's not really anything that can be done to me that's a threat. I'm not serving as a clinician. I don't have a practice anymore because that became impossible, even though I love doing it. And I'm also not very happy about that. So I'm like the person who can do this. And Canadians have no idea to what degree professionals in Canada are now required not to say what they think or to lie outright. So, for example,
it's not just Canadians, it's Westerners in general. Westerners in general are the most clueless bunch I've ever... Well, okay. Westerners in general, the difference between Westerners and Africans, I would say, is Africans are probably equally ignorant about how the government operates. Africans are like Africans in Nigeria, Nigerians, Ghanaians, South Africans, many of them are pretty ignorant about how the government works and most of the things they do. But the thing is, they know. We know that we don't know what our government is doing. We know that our government is lying to us. Even though we don't know exactly how and to what degree what they are saying is true, is a lie, we know that they cannot be trusted and we should not trust them. We know that anytime they come up with a story, there's something we call in Nigeria called story for the gods. That means you're telling stories, false stories that should not be taken serious. You are creating fiction. What you are telling is fiction. It's not based on facts. We know that about our government, and our government at this point just don't even care if we believe them or not, because they know that for the most part we don't. But Westerners, on the other hand, don't even consider that possibility that the government is lying to them. Like, the government is right until proven otherwise. That's how Westerners operate. Nigerians operate, the government is wrong until proven otherwise. Westerners are like, the government is right until proven otherwise. So the government can come up with something preposterous and ridiculous. And they'll be like, oh, let's give them a chance. Why Nigerians will be like, oh yeah, story. Tell me something I haven't had. So that is like the Western problem.
Therapists are required by law to lie about, let's say, the gender identity of minors. And so for me, especially on the therapy side, if you're required by law and by your professional organization to lie cowardly, you're done as a therapist, because the only thing you've got as a therapist is honesty. That's it. Honesty is what's curative. So, you know, it's just part of how surreal the world is, and particularly how surreal Canada is. It's hard to fathom.
It is hard to fathom. Can I read just a couple of sentences?
Before she reads something, there's something someone said, and I think is really interesting. Let me see if I can find it. It's from Bonato T. I don't know if I pronounced your name well, but yeah, what he said is very, very important. He said this will be used as a precedent to silence anyone and everyone. Exactly, which is the point I've been trying to make. That's one thing about censorship. It's the very same reason for which you just silence someone else who you think you hate. It's the very same reason, the very same precedents that will be used to silence you. You know, and you should be worried. The fact that people are not worried about this is something. In fact, for me, there are two things that are troubling about this situation. One is that it is happening, right? And two is that many people, like, whether it looks like, I'm not sure, but it just looks like so many people are oblivious about it. And even if they know about it, they pretty much don't care. They feel, oh, well, it's Jordan Peterson. You know, why the hell should I care? You know. Someone said, Toaster said, people criticize LGBTQ all the time. Yeah, they do. But now it is becoming a problem to do so without facing legal consequences. Believe me, like was it not Ireland the other time that was working on a bill that was in the Senate, in the Ireland Senate, and somebody made a speech about how hate speech bills, various hate speech bills are being like promoted in different countries in the West. Hate speech bills. And you think those speech will not include criticizing LGBTQIA plus individuals or the idea itself? It is definitely going to include that. You might be like, it happens all the time, but to use that as an excuse to say, oh, well, it is not really that consequential, which is nothing to be worried about, is, for me, I feel, is that you are not noticing a trend. And noticing, the other day, was it not a 16-year-old that was arrested in West Yorkshire by the West Yorkshire police for telling a police officer that she looks like her lesbian grandmother? We all reacted to that clip. Do you still remember? That was a thing. And that was considered homophobic. And why it was homophobic was because the police officer felt offended. The female police officer felt offended. Big power trip at that moment. She wanted to see a trend. You know, what did West Yorkshire police do? Release her and then said, okay, we understand this thing and we'll ensure that it doesn't happen again. Like, this is not really an anomaly for them. For the most part, it's like, yeah, it's fine. It's good that it happened. You know, and it's going to happen again. People get arrested for praying in front of Planned Parenthood abortion clinics, just for praying in front of it. People get arrested for that. People get arrested for as in, this is something that is happening in the West. To act like, oh, but people criticize them all the time. Are you oblivious of the fact that so many of them who have done this criticism have lost a lot, including their freedom, and are now criminals because they criticize somebody? If you watch What is a Woman, so a father of a girl was placed on house arrest because he misgendered his daughter. That did not happen. And this is not me picking up isolated incidents. This is a trend. That's one thing about a trend, is that when it starts, it does not look like it is affecting everybody. It looks like they are picking out scapegoats and they are making example out of them. If you look at that and be like, hey, well, it's just a few, then you don't really understand what is going on. You know, so that is that.
From the decision, so people have an idea of what's in here. It's linked below. People can read the entire thing. But there's parts, like this is how it begins. When individuals join a regulated profession, they do not lose their charter right to freedom of expression. At the same time, however, they take on obligations and must abide by the rules of their regulatory body that may limit their freedom of expression.
Is that not a blatant contradiction? Like the person who wrote this thing, when he wrote it, he did not see the obvious contradiction. When individuals join a regulated profession, they do not lose their charter rights to freedom of expression. At the same time, however, they take an obligation and must abide by the rules of their regulatory body that may limit their freedom of expression. It's like saying, oh, individuals who join a regulated profession do not lose their freedom of speech, but they lose their freedom of speech. It's better to just have written it like that. They do not lose their freedom of speech, but they lose their freedom of speech. That's essentially what the court just said here. Like the ridiculous, obvious contradiction.
That's just one sentence after another. That's how it starts.
Yeah, perfect. It's a great thing to highlight. You know, it's like, well, you have this fundamental right, but
you don't have it.
What rules? There's a rule, eh? There's a rule. Is that right? That the College of Psychologists has, that I can't criticize Justin Trudeau on Twitter. That's a rule, is it? And if someone anywhere in the world complains about the fact that I've criticized Justin Trudeau, let's say, that all of a sudden that's a rule, even though it wasn't a rule. And
that's another funny thing. These are not rules. He did not. There is no rule that prevents him from doing any of this. This is just arbitrary, like witch hunting. This is obvious witch hunting.
Of course, I get to criticize Justin Trudeau, not only because he richly deserves it in every way you can possibly imagine, but because that's actually what freedom of speech means. So I have no idea what the court means by, abiding by the rules. So the rules are whatever the bloody College of Psychologists determines constitutes a rule after the fact, given their complete freedom to make manifest any rules they want.
Yeah.
There's something somebody highlighted here. This is from Bido. He said, in Nigeria, lawyers can be censored under the conduct unbecoming of a legal profession provision, imparting their role as free speech defenders. First, of course, that is problematic in of itself, that a legal professional can be censored and, seen as someone who is performing a conduct unbecoming of his profession. That's one thing, right? That in of itself is a problem. In Nigeria here, it is a problem. Second is, however, that does not include criticizing the government. That has never included criticizing the government. That is why you find in Nigeria that the biggest critic of any government of the day are lawyers. So even though there is a code of conduct that prevents you from saying certain things under legal, ethics code you find in the Nigerian, I don't know what to call it right now. But even though there is something like that, it does not apply to political speech. I will be hard if that is the case. Then certain lawyers that exist in this country that are huge activists and heavy critics of the government, critics of the government will not exist. But they do. And they criticize the government, criticize government policies, show how wrong the government is. Sometimes even insult them. And we don't see any of them getting arrested for or getting their license revoked for that. So that is for me a significant difference that should be pointed out with how Nigerian professional bodies operate. In fact, what is happening in Canada is not in line with any rule of conduct for psychologists. It's not in line with that. It's not. These are made up rules. We came up with this 2 minutes ago just because we want to silence you. Second thing is, just to go back to the first thing I said, if there are laws that limit what a professional should say, it will be, do not say false things, or say something in a particular manner, something like that. But I don't think it will go, it's full out like something political or something commonsensical like the things Jordan Peterson have been saying. I don't think that is what it applies to. Anyways, I hope I was able to provide something that looks like a meaningful response to what you just said. And then this is from Tefita. I can't pronounce your surname. Love your channel and the way you think. Hope to improve my analytical thoughts to be proficient like yours. Wow, I don't know if I would say I'm that proficient, but thank you for the 9. I don't know if that's pounds or euros. I need to really know what these things are and really memorize them. Jesus Christ. And this is from Bonetto T. Say Fidel Trudeau is acting like his daddy. He is. And this chat said, problem with censorship will ultimately break societies down. It will. I don't see a way society can be able to progress when there is censorship. Censorship has always stood in the way of progress. It has always stood in the way of progress. And if you keep doing that, your society cannot advance under the full weight of it's so bad. Okay, for many people who are like, well, it's just a few. Elon Musk is currently there's a charge against him from the Department of Justice in the United States because his company SpaceX does not hire immigrants, only hires U.S. citizens, which does not make sense. I mean, really, is there a labor law that says you must hire immigrants? And isn't it a good thing that the only employees at SpaceX are citizens of America? Won't you see that and be like, oh, that's a hiring citizens? How is that a problem? Like, anybody who sees that will be like, good. Like, how is that a problem? And yet they're taking SpaceX to court because of that. Obviously, you know why this is happening. It has nothing to do with. Do you know an organization in America that only hire US citizens? The Department of Justice, the very Department of Justice that is bringing up a case against Elon Musk. So if you look at what is going on and you feel, oh well, it's just no. This is obvious censorship. This is obviously the government using its power to go against somebody they consider a political opponent. This is Sani Abacha minus the bloodshed. This is Ibrahim Babangida minus the bloodshed. This is Olusegun Obasanjo when he was military head of state, when he locked up Fela. This is him minus the brutality. That's something, and it's another thing. It's just like how Americans feel it is not sex trafficking if you don't kidnap the lady. It's the same way they feel. It is not censorship if you are not brutalizing somebody for the opinions they express. It's like you are waiting for the brutal element to be introduced. Then you're like, okay, this is bad. And I'm like, no, it's not until somebody is hung, executed for what they say that offend the government that you're like, okay, now our freedom of speech is under attack. Okay? And I hope this becomes clear as we proceed, or at least as time goes on, people begin to realize this and speak up against this. Like really speak up against this and not support any government that pushes something like this.
And yeah, but I have freedom of speech. It's like, do I now? What do I get to talk about? Apparently, I can't even talk about the weather. You know, here's another fact. This is literally the truth. People can submit a complaint to the College of Psychologists from anywhere in the world. And so someone in the States submitted a complaint about the last conversation I had with Joe Rogan, where I expressed my doubts about the validity of economic predictions based on climate science. The complainant submitted the entire transcript, right? A 3-hour conversation as evidence of my unprofessional behavior. And the college, which did not have to pursue that complaint, went forward with it. So like, okay, I talked to Joe for 3 hours. Apparently, everything I said in that 3 hours was unprofessional and a disgrace to the profession. So like, well, what am I supposed to do about that? The answer is, well, we're going to appeal the decision. I will take this to the Supreme Court. I don't think that any judges will have either the wisdom or the courage to rule about this properly, except at the Supreme Court level. And I'm not particularly optimistic about that either.
I'm not optimistic about that either. I don't see how you can win this without overturning colleges in general. And I don't, like, that's not a good look for the colleges to lose this. So won't the Supreme Court, I know they're not supposed to be pressured, but won't they, what's the benefit for them for ruling in your favor? Other than
Well, the
withholding
benefit would
freedom
be
of
that they
speech.
support, well, they would support the most fundamental principle of a free society, right? It's like, why do you have the right to freedom of speech? Well, the answer is because there's no difference between free speech and thinking, no difference between free speech and dialogue, and no difference between free speech and problem solving and negotiation. And so, and therefore peace. If you eliminate that, people can no longer, civil democracy itself is predicated. Now, I don't think we have the right to free speech in Canada. I think this decision today demonstrates that obviously. I saw the same thing with the Law Society in Canada. Partly was why I'm not surprised at this ruling. I've been through this before, and I see that Canada's walked down that idiot path for at least 30 years. So our country is in, well, this is where I start to get doubtful. It's like either I'm wrong or the country is in trouble. Now, to tell you the truth, I would rather be wrong. But I've thought it through. It's like, okay, what did I do exactly? None of my clients complained. That has nothing to do with this. And I expressed my political opinions, which I have a right to do, which I believe were correct. I think that, and Canadians agree with this now. The last poll indicated that Canadians believe that Justin Trudeau is the worst prime minister we've ever had. Well, that was sort of my point a year ago, you know? And so if I can't say that, and yet a majority of Canadians believe it to be true, and believe me, a lot more of them are going to believe that. A lot more are going to believe that in the relatively near future. In what sense do I have anything even approximating freedom of speech? And if I can't have that opinion, and therefore, in principle, no one can, then what do we do when we're stuck with a prime minister, let's say, who everyone has decided is the worst prime minister the country's ever had? Well,
then nobody is allowed to say it. Essentially, if Canadians are thinking this, a huge majority of Canadians are thinking that Justin Trudeau is the worst prime minister there ever has been, and then you are going to strip Jordan Peterson of his license because he says he said the same thing that everyone is thinking and everyone believes, then it means, I mean, put 2 and 2 together, then it means Canadians can no longer express that opinion about Justin Trudeau. Then are you still living in a democracy? Are you still living in a free society? Obviously not. Obviously not. And there's something he said earlier that is really true, which is that free expression is how you think, is how you communicate. When it talks about dialogue, is how you interact with people, is how you negotiate, right? Is how you negotiate, is how you operate in society through expression. We solve problems when we talk to each other, when we converse with each other. We articulate better when we communicate our thoughts with others. Then if our thoughts are negative, they get criticized. If they are positive, they get reinforced and praised. You know, that is how society progresses. And I'm not saying that that process will not lead to people saying things, you know, being abused. For example, people just, you know, insulting you, or people just using it to offend you, or that process will not lead to offense, so you will not feel offended. Anything can offend anybody, make you feel the usual word they like to use, unsafe. That is not out of the picture, but we are saying it is a necessary risk, a necessary condition you have to put yourself through for your society to be able to advance, for people to be able to express themselves well, and for us to come to the truth. These are the things we have to risk, and it's a risk worth taking. I mean, consider this. You are left to, this is your option in a society. Either you don't freely express yourself or you live in a lie. And when you freely express yourself, people are going to get offended, but we are going to come to the truth. But if you don't express yourself, you live in a lie. And what do you think comes as a result of living in a lie? The conflict, lack of progress, barbaric practices, evil. Evil bask in lies. One environment that evil cherishes so much is lies. So if you want to rid your society of evil, then you have to allow people to freely express themselves, because it's through that means that we will get to the truth. But it looks like, or it's not just it looks like, obviously we now have people in society, some people in society who love lies and will do anything to protect the lie that they know is a lie, but they want to believe it. That is one of the things that is empowering the government to go ahead with this. Is that despite how unpopular this is, and despite how unpopular someone like Justin Trudeau is, yes, people are going to support him because of LGBTQ. People are going to support him because they don't want to feel offended. Because somehow if you lie, if you tell people lies, they will like you. They will not be challenged. They will not be made uncomfortable. I mean, you have a senator in Ireland saying if you're going to make a statement that will make somebody deeply uncomfortable, then your right to make that statement should be restricted. That is exactly what this is like a relatively close representation of exactly what a senator in Ireland said with regard to a hate speech bill that they were deliberating in the Ireland Senate. If your speech is going to make somebody feel deeply uncomfortable, then that speech should be restricted. How do you get to the truth? How do you advance? Do you know that scientific discoveries like the discovery of the vacuum made people deeply uncomfortable? Many people were deeply uncomfortable by just that realization that you can create a vacuum. Do you know many progress that we've had in society today, when they were first introduced, many people were deeply uncomfortable about it. Like this truth has never been comfortable. Discoveries have never been comfortable. Imagine if society back then was like, which they tried to do at the beginning. We're like, okay, we are not comfortable with this, so don't make it popular in the public space. Did it lead to the level of progress we are seeing today? One of the reasons why we have the rapid progress we see today is that people are allowed to express their findings, honestly say what they know to be true. That is how we've been able to advance today as a society at such rapid pace. And then you are going to bring all of that to a halt because somehow we now have a very fragile generation that cannot handle basic truths that have been. It's not like we're even discovering new truths. Is that we are re-echoing something that is already, like, think about it. In the past, people were angry with new discoveries. Today, people are angry with old discoveries. Things that have already been settled facts, like a man is a man, a woman is a woman. That is what is upsetting people. And that's what we are doing censorship for now. Old truths. Is that not ridiculous? Like, is that not... When you think about it, does it not just sound like this is really absurd? Like, this is the way, like, it's like as we've advanced in every other thing, mentally we've just went back like 500 years. It's well.
Move. Run if you can.
Well, this is another reason, why I'm in a position that I can fight this, because the worst thing that could happen is the college can take away my license. Now, I already know that if my license gets taken away, there are other jurisdictions that will grant me a license the next day. And there's a real comedic element to that, because I could lose my license in Ontario and instantly be licensed in at least 3 other jurisdictions. And so that's not going to look very good with regard to the Ontario College of Psychologists.
Well, at least they got rid of you.
Well, and fair enough. And if that's what they want, I mean, the other problem that the college is going to face is that, and I don't know exactly what they're going to make of this, but all the people who are involved in this prosecution are going to find very soon that this will eat their life. So,
from a media perspective,
I've offered to the college to negotiate. I actually have a solution in mind. And I've heard with an idea, they haven't got back to me. I think they're waiting for this decision, to tell you the truth. And of course, they're going to be entirely emboldened by this. I know the solution, which I'm a reasonable solution. But, and I also know, or think I know, you might ask, well, why is the college doing this? And my suspicions are, because we've been through this before, when Cambridge University canceled the seminar I was going to conduct there on Exodus, I found out eventually that it was basically one person who was behind all of that. There were two more that were associated with that person who are pushing the college to go after me for whatever the hell their reasons are. Maybe they disagree with my political opinions, particularly on the trans front. And that was the tweet, I think, that really probably initiated all this, right? I tweeted about Elliot Page. And so I'm perfectly happy that I tweeted that particular tweet. And I also think in 5 years, nobody will admit that they were ever in favor of any of this, right? This is far worse than the lobotomies of the 1930s.
Exactly.
This is inexcusable.
Exactly. That's one thing anybody who is seeing this should know. The reason why they are going after him is because of what he said about transgender and trans ideology. We all know why they are doing this, because of what he said about Elliot Page. That is what all this is about, right? That's what this is all about. He said something about, that's why I keep repeating, because your feelings were hurt, you're trying to silence someone, and this is like a few minority of people who claim to be offended, and then there are many people who are sympathetic to that, and you're like, okay, since you're offended, let's give you whatever. But everybody, that is why they're after him. It's not really because of he even criticized Justin Trudeau or because of what he said about climate change. It's because of trans ideology. That is why they are going after him. Doesn't even make sense. And here's the thing. We all know, like every sane, normal, rational, or somebody in society who is not mentally ill, everybody knows that trans ideology is false from head to toe. Everything about it is false. It's very false. It's a lie. The biggest lie the West has ever pushed on itself is that a man can become a woman and a woman can become a man, and that gender is fluid, and that gender and sex is different, and people should transition when they feel differently. Everyone knows that this is absolutely false. There is no version of it that is true. It's so like, if there's any reason for you to destroy yourself, if there's any lie upon which to destroy your entire reputation and destroy your society, this is the most comical of all of them. Like, this is it. Even an idiot in Nigeria knows that, will look at this and be like, really? The funny thing about trans ideology is everyone, even the person who calls himself trans, knows that he's lying to himself. He or she, they are lying to themselves. They know it. And that's the thing about, like, every time I make a video criticizing somebody in the trans community, I feel it as an easy joke, because everybody knows it's like, you don't need to point it out. Even the very person claiming to be trans knows that it is ridiculous. That's why when you argue with them, they get angry. They don't want to, they even feel, oh, there's no way we can convince these people, because, yeah, there's no way you can convince these people, because everything you are saying is absolutely ridiculous. Everything you are saying makes complete no sense whatsoever. As in, there is there are claims that people make that you can look at and be like, okay, there is some semblance of reasoning, of logic, of common sense, or something that you say is intelligent attached to it. But every person you see pushing the trans ideology just sounds stupid. Every person, no matter how the level of degree, the amount of degrees this person have hanging on their office wall, whenever they come out to anything that come out of their mouth just sounds stupid. It just sounds stupid. Like, it's the dumbest thing I've ever seen in society. Like, when I'm young, I've not seen so many. But climate change, you can even make a case for, oh, well, there's something to be said about. I mean, the assumption upon which climate change builds its whole movement upon, which is that carbon, holds heat, and the more there's carbon in the atmosphere, the more heat. I mean, it makes sense to a degree. You can be like, okay, I can see that this is a logical assumption, even though there is nothing empirical that backs it up, but it's a logical assumption, right? But the same cannot be said about trans ideology. There is nothing logical about it. Absolutely nothing. And this is upon this hill that somebody wants to destroy a college, an institution, want to destroy itself. A society, a civilization want to end itself. And it's stupid when I see some people try to undermine it and be like, oh no, let's not focus on this stuff. It's not really that serious. I'm like, are you kidding me right now? An entire generation is about to be castrated. And you think it's not problematic? On the altar of something that is absolutely ridiculous. Like, on the altar of something that makes no sense. It's the dumbest joke ever. Like it's a very stupid joke.
You know, I read one poor kid today on Twitter, detransitioner, was decrying his castration. Fancy that. And pointing out, for example, that, you know, he's a young guy. He has no sexual drive whatsoever. And he said, well, you know, what am I going to do? What have I lost? I can't believe I was so stupid as to have gone through with this. It's like, you know, fair enough, kid. You probably should have woken up. But the people who facilitated that transformation, this
is by Kachi Obasi. He said, who is they? Why is they trying to cancel people? What is they trying to achieve by cancelling free speech? At Frank, these things are subjective. Saying that they know it is not true is exactly the problem. No. There is a day. I will tell you who the day is. Especially they are trans activists. Woke, the woke mob. We know them. We find them in woke. You see them on social media. You see them in companies. You see them in Hollywood. You see them everywhere. They are everywhere. They are not a huge majority. I will grant you that. But they know how to make the loudest noise. So there's no, to ask me who is the they, like you don't know who the they are. I don't think is a, really, come on. You know, so we know who the days, we know who they are. You know, some of them, even one of them can go by that pronoun. So you know who the days are. Okay? That's one. Second is that you said, Frank, these things are subjective. What is subjective? Saying that they know that it is not true is exactly the problem. No. See, listen. Trans people know. They instinctively know. They may not give you a mental assent to it, but they instinctively know. That is why they want you to affirm it. If they don't, there is the drive for this public affirmation of my identity is proof that these people know that what they are saying and what they are proclaiming is false. They want you to affirm it because they know it is false. If they know it is true, if you are confident in what you know to be true, you will not want somebody to echo it. You don't need public affirmation for you to be firmly rooted in what you believe about yourself to be true. Now, I'm not saying you will not be affected by negative remarks that try to undermine something you know to be true about yourself. But when those remarks come, you can take solace in the truth. But you see trans people in the trans movement, those who identify as trans, they have no solace in the truth. So therefore, everybody must echo the lie they've been telling themselves. Everything must echo that lie. Everything. History, religion, politics, everything. That is a clear example of somebody who knows that everything that they stand for is false. They may not say it, but they act it. And it's because instinctively they know it is false. Have you seen these people who claim, like the men who claim to be women? Have you seen their face? You want to tell me that person looked at himself in the mirror while he was putting up that lipstick on that mustache, while there's mustache on top of it, and be like, yeah, I'm 100% a woman. That is how I feel. No. This person know that they are lying to themselves. And that nobody nobody with complete brain cells will look at them and be like, yeah, this person is a woman. Except that person wants to affirm the lie. So no, everybody knows it to be false. It is not a subjective thing. That is one thing that I can say. I can make a general statement on. Everybody knows that it is false that a man, even those who have gender dysphoria, like the real, everybody now is claiming to have gender dysphoria just because they want to enter a woman's bathroom. But even those who have gender dysphoria know that they are not the opposite gender. I don't know what this comment is about. I guess people are fleshing it out in the comments. So let me leave you guys to it and continue the video.
Therapists and your surgeons.
What happened to do no harm?
Yeah, right. I should also point out, just so everyone is aware of this, surgeons are much more likely to be psychopathic than people in the typical profession. That's a well-documented phenomenon in the psychological literature. Now, it's not only surgeons, obviously. You see that in other professions as well. But if you happen to be sadistic and psychopathic, a profession that allows you to cut people up, and you think, well, there are no people like that. It's like, well, I think they just arrested some nurse in the UK for killing a bunch of babies in her psychopathic and sadistic manner. And so if you don't think there are people like that, you're naive beyond belief, and you better bloody well pray that you never meet anyone like that, because they're looking for someone just as naive as you to have their way with.
There are countries now that have outlawed.
Sorry, there was somebody's comment that I highlighted because I wanted to react to it later. Now I can't find it. Oh, there you are. And this is that they were not classified as a third gender. I am very sure that those so-called trans people, we are not seen as neither male nor female. I am very sure about that. That there is no time in history. You might say, okay, these people we are seen as having special conditions, having special behavior. Maybe there's even a name for that behavior and how they were. I mean, people act like we don't have cross-dressers. We've always had cross-dressers. We've always had people who did not fit the stereotype of male and female. We've always had those in society. That is not what trans mean. Trans mean this person is not. God. The way people behave, like when you talk about trans, they don't know what it means. I need to define it again. Being trans is that somebody is a man, has excess chromosome, and believe that somehow they are the opposite. They are exactly the opposite. And you are saying throughout history, we have it as human civilization has recognized that somebody who is a man is somehow a woman. And that it exists. But we did not call them women. We called them third gender. What are you saying? What exactly are you saying? And also, let's investigate your term gender. Let's investigate that. What do you mean by that? In India, what does that mean? Because there are so many things that we are not seen as gender in the past that we are not calling gender today. And this is from Moon Phantom. He said, hi, I just want to give a quick hi from Denmark. And yes, the West has gone insane. And it is mind-blowing to see how docile everyone is and how much they just trust the state. Yeah, crazy.
Surgery for minors. Transgender surgeries for minors. Like I believe Sweden has.
They didn't exactly outlaw it. I got corrected on that claim by community notes on Twitter. Well, what happened was they've restricted surgery to minors to clinical trials, which is, it's a detail. They've backtracked. There's no doubt Denmark, France, Sweden, the UK, Holland, the Netherlands, which is particularly relevant because that's where this gender affirming surgical idiocy first made itself manifest, the Europeans have woken up to the fact that, well, you know what? Turns out that there's no evidence that sterilizing young people and cutting off their breasts makes them happier. Isn't that a shock?
Yep. I think this is going to this is an argument that has to be had right now, and there's going to be such pushback from people who have gone through these surgeries starting now. It's already happening.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
You had some more things to read from the decision.
Yeah. Well, there are a couple of other, I don't know if they're funny, but there are a couple of other parts just to clarify what's going on. Is that this decision that they've come to ordered Dr. Peterson as a registered member of the college.
This is from this comment. This comment said, like, what's the point in saying your beliefs are wrong, just as the other can say, no, your beliefs are wrong. We both have life experiences that guide our beliefs, and both are equally valid. Your experience is valid. The deduction from your experience can be valid or invalid. This is something people say, yeah, my experience is valid. Yes, your experience is valid, but what you deduce from that experience can be invalid. I've seen people who go through things that should make them realize something, and then they realize the complete opposite. Am I going to look at them and say, okay, yeah, if he's saying that based on his experience, then that is valid? No, your experience, yes, it is valid, but what you are deducing from it is invalid. Okay, we cannot argue experience, right? There's nothing to refute what you went through, but what you are going to conclude based on what you went through can be completely wrong. And there is a point to me saying you are wrong, and another person saying no, you are not wrong. Because then we have to present evidence that is more than just our experience. We may have to use logic. We may have to use empirical data. We may have to, use so many things to flesh out our experience. And then everyone can listen to us. And, even if I don't change the other person's mind, at least people who are listening to the debate can go with their minds changed. And there is value in that. There is value in doing that. It's not a meaningless, pointless exercise when people get to come together and present their beliefs and make a case for their beliefs. It's not just saying, oh, you are wrong, no, you are right. It's that we get to make a case. If all we do is, no, you are wrong, no, you are right, everybody will look at both of us and be like, they've not made a case for it. So then we get to make a case for it. We get to make a case for our positions, and everybody get to listen to the cases, to our arguments. And somebody who has a superior argument is typically how it goes is that person's views are adopted, and the person whose argument is, does not make a strong case for what they hold to be their beliefs. We disregard them, and sometimes may even see how preposterous and ridiculous their beliefs are, and just ignore them completely. And if they adamantly refuse to change their position, at least for the most part, the most of society will look at them and be like, this person is dumb. This person's view has been refuted. It doesn't make sense. And then we become wiser as a society. That is how society advances. But to say somebody saying you are wrong, another person saying you are not wrong, there's no point to it. No, and all of us are valid. Yes, your experience is valid. It's just your argument may not be. Experience is not argument. It may be used to back up an argument, but it's not an argument. Well, sorry if I took your words out of context, please. But I'm just saying, I'm making a case anyways, but I hope the point itself is valid. The point I just made, itself is valid, even though you feel it does not really represent what you are trying to say. I'm not taking what you're saying out of context. Let's go back to the thing you said earlier before you assume what I was saying. You say, like, what's the point? That's what I'm responding to. You say, what's the point in saying your beliefs are wrong, just for the other person to say, no, your beliefs are wrong? We both have life experiences that guide our belief, and both are equally valid. And what is my response? My response is, there is a point to saying my beliefs are wrong and then someone else refuting it. There is a point to it. That is my response. So I don't know if there's any way I'm taking something you are saying out of context, but I believe that's a direct response to what you were saying, which is, and also I'm showing that there is a valid, there's a point that there's a purpose in debate. and that experiences are valid, but deductions from experiences can be invalid. I don't know if that's not a direct response to what you're saying, but please do enlighten me in the comments.
To complete a specified continuing education or remedial program, a SCRP, regarding professionalism in public statements. The order is not disciplinary, it clarifies that here, and does not prevent, that's good, right? It's not a punishment. You just have to pay for things you don't want to do. Yeah.
Right. I have to pay for things I don't want to do. It's also not specified, so that what's specified is that I have to be retrained. What's specified in the specification is that I have to be retrained, regardless of how long that takes, until the people who are responsible for the retraining have decided that I've learned my lesson, right? So don't tell me that's specified, and don't bloody well lie, you pikers, and tell me that that's not disciplinary. How pathetic can you get? It's like, if you're going to come after me, why don't you bloody well admit that you're disciplining me, which is absolutely 100% obvious, especially because you're also claiming that I deserve to be disciplined. You know, it's like claiming you're in favor of freedom of speech and then telling me that, well, except that, you know, you're a professional. And of course, we wouldn't want professionals to be able to, you know, tell the truth or say what they think, because everyone wants their professionals to lie to them, because that's how you get the best advice and guidance, obviously.
Yeah. I think what shocks me about this is...
It's just so funny. They do this all the time, where they will tell they are punishing you and then they say, well, this is not a punishment. I'm like, how? Define punishment. Sorry, please, define punishment. You punish me, something is obviously, evidently a punishment, and you're like, well, it is not a punishment. Like, no, it is clearly a punishment. You know, somehow I call it trans identification. Even words now have trans meaning. You know, they now have the meaning that we all know it is, and then the meaning that the person saying it holds to be the meaning. So somebody might insult you, and then you're like, did you just insult me? And like, no, I did not insult you. And you're like, no, you pretty much insulted. And no, what I said does not identify as an insult. So I'm punishing you. But what I'm doing to you does not identify as a punishment. You know, and that is this is another thing about censorship and the whole double speak is how meaning itself is being eradicated. Words no longer have meaning. Concepts no longer have meaning. You know, it means whatever the person who is claiming the meaning of it is claiming. So I can do something that is totally opposite of what I'm saying it is, and be like, no, that's not what it is. Just like every time I see Elliot Page, right? That's the new name, right? When I see this person claiming to be joyous, and every time you can see the sadness written all over the face, and yet this person is like, I am full of joy, I am joyful. And like, yeah, except that's the word now we now use to refer to sadness. Except sadness is now joy and joy is now sadness. As if we switch those words. That is, it is only under that circumstance that someone will look at Elliot Page and say, this person is joyful. The same thing they are doing with it's like words now, they no longer have meaning. Like, what does this mean?
You are basically being brought to task over the Joe Rogan podcast, one of the Joe Rogan podcasts, which is insane, and over political tweets. Like it says right here, a tweet on February 19th in which Dr. Peterson commented that an Ottawa city councillor was an appalling self-righteous moralizing thing. Mm-hmm.
An appalling self-righteous moralizing thing. Yeah, well, I used thing because I didn't want to get in trouble on the pronoun front.
And this is from the commenter earlier trying to help me understand. He's saying, what I said is that he has a reason to be a liberal and I have my reason to be a libertarian. I was just saying it is okay to agree to disagree about politics. Okay, if that's the point you're trying to make, I get, okay, fine, fair enough. Maybe there's something you said earlier to show that that's kind of what you were trying to say. But fine, agree to disagree is normal. You know, and I think it's even one way we can have civil conversation without it getting heated and people having built up negative emotion about somebody who is on the other side of, you know, whatever ideological divide there is. We can all be like, okay, we don't agree now, but hopefully we'll keep talking about it. So yeah, this is from Artistic Logic. Jordan has to be restrained to abandon common sense reasoning, rational and logical thought, and that's coming from an institution of higher learning. As in, this is sad. It is. Imagine that this is coming from, in the past, these institutions in the past were created to enable professionals to find out the truth. Usually how this institution started, when during the Enlightenment era, was you build this building, like this center of learning, and then people who have an argument will come and demonstrate it, and the goal is for people to seek the truth. And this was removed from the public space, because when it was done in public, it usually results in fights and people get angry and it becomes heated. So these institutions were originally created, right, so that people can have this conversation without public pressure to keep quiet. Only for a few years down the line, that institution is now where you cannot even speak freely, and the public, especially, is now where you can speak freely. Like, it doesn't even make sense. Like, where truth is no longer in the institutions, and then people talk about, oh, why don't we trust the institution anymore? Because the institution is not driven by the truth. Politics have destroyed everything, just like what it is designed to do. Politics is designed to destroy everything. Once something becomes political, it becomes ruined.
Oh, well, I don't think that panned out well.
Well, we'll see. And so far, it's caused a certain amount of trouble. Okay, so there was the Ottawa City Councillor. Yeah. What other?
Tweet on January 2nd in which Dr. Peterson responded to an individual who expressed concern over overpopulation. That's how it's worded. And your response was, you're free to leave at any point.
The person actually said, just so we get this right, that there were too many people on the planet. Now, I'm not very happy with that statement at all, because I listen to what people say. And when people say, well, there should only be 500 million people on the planet because that's what the planet can sustain, I think, what do you plan to do with the other 7,500,000,000? They're inconvenient, are they? And what do you think they should be dispensed with? Just exactly what the hell are you saying? And if you think that there are too many people, well, what makes you so sure that you're not one of them?
Exactly. I agree 100. If you think there are so many people in the so many individuals exist on this planet right now, please excuse us. Just excuse us. If you are free to leave. Like, if we are so much, I mean, imagine you enter into a crowded room, right? Just think about like this. You enter into a room and you feel this room is overcrowded. What do? Don't you just go out and be like, I can't stay in this crowded place. I'm leaving. No elbow room. I'm getting out of here. That's what a normal human being does, Abi. No, not this climate activists and these genocidal maniacs that put themselves under the umbrella of being environmentalists. What they do is, no, we need to reduce this population. We need to reduce this. Start with the man in the mirror, please. Just follow the lyrics of Michael Jackson's song and start with the man in the mirror. Show us how committed you are to reducing the population of the earth. Start with the man in the mirror. It's not someone else's child you want to take out of the surface of this earth. And this is the funny thing. You have some of these people, they have 4 children, some 6, and they're telling you should give birth to only 1. Like, they really, just like the other ones who are just flying private jets to and fro, and then they're telling you that it's your car that is the problem. Like, their carbon footprint, no matter the amount of a vehicle and what have you consume, will never amount to what these people emit in a single year. What your carbon footprint in your entire existence will not amount to that what they emit in a single year. But you are the problem, not them. The obvious response to those people is start with the man in the mirror. Practice what you preach. But of course, what is climate change without hypocrisy? What is climate change without people not willing to commit to their own idea, to fully commit to their own ideas?
Especially
It's always
if you're
someone
the one
else.
that's concerned about it.
Right? It's always someone else who needs to change. It's always someone else. And the government should get that someone else to agree. It's always someone else. I hate ideology that has to start with someone else. It's all those ideas that people bring up. Climate change is a good example. It always starts, it's not you. It can never be you. Haba, why you? It's someone else.
You know, if the lifeboat is too crowded to float, maybe the morally appropriate thing to do is jump off, right? To save everybody else. Not to pretend that, well, who is it? Is it the Africans who don't get to have fossil fuels, for example? Is it?
Which is one of the reasons I hate the whole climate change movement. Because the people who suffer the most from it are Africans. And the same people who... Westerners are remarkably... as in, with the level of stupidity we are seeing in this day and age, need to be studied for eternity. They believe that they want to empower Africans. They are like, oh, these African nations are suffering. Oh my God, we need to do something about it. And all they end up saying is, oh, slavery, oh, colonialism, oh, reparations, blah, 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 blah. And that is where it ends. And I'm like, the same people who are talking about all these things are pushing for climate change. Do you know what you are pushing for? Something that will cripple the African economy. Of course, it's just ignorant people anyways. They know nothing. But they will not keep quiet.
People all over the world, the poor people who are multiplying so rapidly they're devouring the planet's resources, should they all go?
Yeah.
And so I have
You see somebody who can afford an iPhone. You can afford a refrigerator. You can afford so many of these appliances that increases the carbon in the world. You can afford all of these things. And the person who is the problem, the cause of this, there's so many people in the population, we need to reduce population. And when people talk about this, you realize the most populated areas is the most populated continent, one of them, the second most populated continent in the world is Africa. So a huge chunk of that population reduction will happen in Africa. A place where many people don't even have access to electricity. They don't even know what a smartphone is. They don't even know what a television is. They've never seen a refrigerator before in their life. That is the place you go and reduce population. That's how demonic this thing is. And then they say, this is the funny thing. After when this is obviously what they want to do, then they say, no, we are trying to save these African countries because, global warming is going to affect them the most. Please. It's like this is how I summarize the whole climate change debate for me, especially among these demonic individuals. This is my summary of it. Oh, if we do not do anything about the climate, so number of people are going to die. It's going to lead to serious genocide that is going to be caused by the greed of capitalism. Because of course they are always attacking capitalism. These are communists in disguise, right? Oh, it's going to we, the West, with our capitalistic drive, we are going to lead to mass genocide. People are going to die. So what is the solution? Yeah, let's come up with policies that are going to still kill people. So it's like, let's kill people now so that in 200 years' time, they won't die. Like, let's do the killing now so that it will not happen 200 years. That's it's substitution method. It's not really like they're really solving any problem. It's like, let's kill the people now. So you're like, if we continue the way we are going, people are going to die in the future. If we don't continue the way we are going, people will die today. So why don't we just let people die today? That's essentially the option that climate activist presents us with. That people are going to die in 50 years' time. Let's kill them now.
absolutely no qualms whatsoever about calling someone out on it, especially when I'm doing it obviously ironically. Now, they actually said, the bloody college said, the complaint was I was counseling to suicide. Okay,
Yeah.
now really, who is stupid enough to think that? Well, obviously, the Canadian College of Psychologists and the Canadian courts. So
Yeah, there's another one. There's another one that kind of goes along with that, where you're clearly joking, and that this is what they say. So this is from the Joe Rogan.
Yeah, there's something somebody said here. This is from Chukwuigwe, and this is very, very important. Capitalism is the only tool that will reduce poverty in Africa. Yes. The only people who complain about capitalism are people who are benefiting from it. That's the beauty of critics of capitalism. Oh, capitalist system. It has widened the gap between the rich and the poor. Look, there's Elon Musk and then there is me. How can this be? In a country where all of us cannot be Elon Musk. Can you imagine? That's widened the gap between the rich and the poor. Why they live in a society that has abundance of goods and services. Right? Come to Africa now, where for you to buy something as this mic, you have to import it. And you have to wait. And when I mean import it, is like if you go to the market, you may not find it. With basic gadgets that you go to and you have to wait 7 days for it to arrive. Basic gadget that you walk into a retail store in America and purchase and just move and not even think about what you bought. Or you order on Amazon and the next day, Amazon Prime, you order it in the morning and it arrives in the evening. In Nigeria, you order it and you wait like 14 days. And that 14 days may become 21 days. You have to pay shipping and all whatnot just to get something that somebody in the West is just taking for granted. You know why that is the case in the West and that's not the case in Africa? A big C word. It's called capitalism. And you're going to stand it. That the only people who criticize capitalism are people who are benefiting from it. You will not see an average individual in Africa who'll be like, no, buying and selling is not what will move us forward. It's if we allow the government to provide us with everything we need and surrender to a governing body to provide us with the things we need. That already exists here. We can see how badly the government is doing.
Podcast. Speaking about air pollution and child deaths, Dr. Peterson said, "It's just poor children and the world has too many people on it anyways," which is clearly
a joke.
Sarcasm. That's in there though.
Yeah. Well, that's and those are so just so everybody's watching and listening knows. So, someone can take out a complaint by going and filling out a form at the Ontario College of Psychologists website. So if anybody out there is inclined to complain some more, just go ahead and do it. But the college doesn't have to pursue those complaints because they can define them as vexatious and just troublemaking, right? So it isn't even only that members of the public, the millions of people that I'm communicating with, let's say, are prone to complain, but that the college itself decided that that was sufficient grounds to threaten my license and to force me into re-education. Of course, they're not doing it for disciplinary reasons. It's like, what the? I don't even understand what that means. If you're not doing it for disciplinary reasons, it's like, why is it forced? And
This is I don't know. First of all, accuse me of saying I'm taking their comments out of context. This is a comment I saw. Africans, we are on Earth way before the Industrial Revolution and we'll be here long after the giant electric grid explodes. Same with the American native Indians. Yeah, even white people, we are here on Earth before Industrial. Everybody was here on Earth before Industrial Revolution. How was the quality of life back then? I don't even know. You see the problem we are dealing with in society. Do you see the problem? Like some things that are obvious fact, we still need to break it down. Now, let me break it down for you. You see, before the Industrial Revolution, before the explosion in science and technology, Africans, we are people, not just Africans, people all over the world, we are dying due to something that if you tell people today that that's what people we are dying from, you'll be like, what? Yeah, people were dying because of that. Infant mortality was through the roof. It wasn't easy. People are glorifying, there's this thing Westerners do today that is just stupid. People are glorifying a nomadic living, primitive existence. You think it's fine? You really think it's dandy? Like, oh, that's a great life. To primitive existence. You think our ancestors were having a blast? You think if they see the way we are living now and they compare that to how they were living and you give them an option, they will choose the way they were living? When for somebody to move from one place to another will take you days, you have to hop on a ship and it may take you may even get diseases just to go from one place to another. Now it can happen in a matter of hours. And you're like, oh, well, we existed then and we continue to exist now. What is the quality of that existence? The West has progressed very well and they have a better standard of living. And you think Africa should not have that? Is that what you're... An extreme poverty? Sicknesses that should not kill an average individual will kill somebody in form of illness that can never exist. Something that $1 worth of cost of drug will fix. And people don't have access to good medicine. Nothing like that. And you have that luxury. You're like, well, Africa existed in the past and will continue to exist. Under what condition will Africa continue to exist? In this current condition? Really, is that what you are wishing on the continent? What do you mean by your statement? What exactly do you mean? Of course, human civilization will continue to exist, but under what condition? Do you know that some of the things we have now, in the past, kings will kill for it. People will go to war for it. You have a smartphone in your hand. In the past, people went to war. Kings went to war just to have such kind of technology. Now everybody carries it around. And you're like, oh, well, we'll continue to exist. Under what condition would we continue to exist? Now, I want to speak. You don't have access to some of the things we have access to. Don't worry. You are going to continue to exist even after the power grid fail. Just have this in mind. Your race will continue to exist even though you die this night. Go and tell that child that and he will be comfortable. At least he will know that, yeah, since my parents keep giving birth to children they cannot take care of, my race will continue to exist. I don't have any thoughts on that. I agree with this take, absolutely.
Why am I being upbraided? That's like the definition of disciplinary. So that just shows you how mendacious the decision is.
Yeah. Yeah. And then it does go to outline.
I agree. Before we continue, I agree with this. I agree with what this person just said. He said this sounds like a post-apocalyptic movie plot. Looks like the mark of privilege is glorifying the lack thereof. Yeah. That's how you know somebody is privileged. Is that they glorify not being privileged. They make it look like it's heaven. It's only people who are privileged that talk like this. Like some of the things I hear Westerners talk, how they glorify primitive life. I'm like, it's because you have not lived it. The only time you live it is when you go for camping and you talk about it like it was a wonderful moment. Yeah, because you get to do it for 1 week. Some people, this is the life that we are born into. And they wish for something better.
Dr. Peterson enter a coaching program with either one or two individuals identified by the panel to review, reflect on, and ameliorate his professionalism in public statements. The coaching program was to begin within 3 months and to be completed within 12. Costs associated with the coaching are borne by you. It also outlines that coaching doesn't end until you've successfully ameliorated your professionalism and learned something.
And what the hell is that supposed to mean precisely? I'd need a whole personality transplant, apparently. Yeah. But there's another problem, too, there. And here's the problem. I'm not wrong. So that's a big problem. And I swear I will do this. If I am required to undergo the retraining, I will undergo the retraining. And I will tape it. And I will broadcast it. and then everyone else can decide. Then everyone else can decide for themselves just exactly what the hell's going on, and whether or not I've contemplated my words, whether or not I've thought through everything I say carefully, whether or not I have any grounds for my opinions. You know, I don't.
Who is that person who wants to take on this wonderful task of re-educating Jordan? Like, who is that person? Like, oh, I pity the fool. I really pity the fool. Who is that person who's like, yeah, I want to re-educate this guy? Like, are you ready for what comes with that? Jesus Christ.
Say things that I haven't thought about, and thought about a lot. And so I agree with Canadians that Justin Trudeau is the worst prime minister that the country has ever had. And I think he's actually far worse than people think. And I think that professionals in Canada no longer have the right to express their thoughts, which invalidates them as useful professionals. And I think they're pushed into a corner so badly that even the brave professionals I know, and I do know some, are unwilling to fight this, to even make public statements in support of me. And if you think that is the hallmark of a free country, there is really something wrong with you.
Yes.
You bloody well better wake up.
Yes.
And if you think that if that's happening to professionals, that it's not going to happen to you, well, you are exactly naive enough to deserve exactly what's coming down the pipeline for you.
Yes. Preach. 100%. If you are naive enough to think this is not going to happen to me, if you are really that dumb to look at this happen and say, no, it's not going to happen to me, then you deserve it when it happens to you. You should not even complain when it happens to you. If you really look at this and you are not worried by it, when it happens to you, yes. Nah, any person who is either championing this thing or nonchalant about it, when it happens to you, know that this is you reaping the fruit of your labor. You have worked hard for it, and you deserve every inch of it. There's a statement that is said in Nigeria. I don't know if it is universal, but I hear it often in Nigeria. Say, when your neighbor's house is on fire, do everything you can to help your neighbor quench that fire. Because when that fire is done, the next house is your own. The next house is your own. So do everything to quench that. Make sure it does not continue, it does not spread. Because when the wind blows, the next house is your own. But if you are not saying, hey, it's just his house, it's just 10 houses away, nothing is going to happen. It's just his house. Okay. When it gets to your house, nobody will be there to quench it. And you would deserve it.
I guess one of the problems I see is, okay, so you're in a good position to fight this, even though it is seriously costing an arm and a leg. And it's time consuming and it's stressful. But at least you're not reliant on your clinical practice for a livelihood, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to other people. What's the average Canadian supposed to do when they're living in a society like this? Like, how do you fight? Because in my opinion, I honestly don't know if you can win this. I think Canada is crooked and woke very, very deep down. So I don't necessarily see this going in a good direction for your clinical license, at least in Ontario. What are average people supposed to do to try and stop their society from going in this kind of direction? Because it feels like I moved. I just ran away. I was like, goodbye to this country. I'm going to America. It has its problems for sure, but at least there's freedom of speech built in there. Like, what does the average Canadian do to fight back against this?
Get involved in the political process at whatever level they can. Get involved in the school boards. Get involved in the political parties. Get involved in local elections. Volunteer for election. Start differentiating between the false government, state-funded legacy news and actual news, if you can do that, even though that's become impossible.
And this thing Boneto T said is very important. And I'll tell you why it is very important. He said, this reminds me of the speech Emperor Haile Selassie delivered when fascist Italy invaded Ethiopia and League of Nations did nothing. He said, today it is us, tomorrow it will be you. And this is very important because so many people criticize me that for the most part I focus on the West. Why are you not focusing on the problem in Nigeria? Why don't you bring it to light? Fair criticism, I would say. Fair. But if you think for a moment that what is happening in the West is not going to happen here or become worse, because it's already happening here in varied degree, maybe milder degree, at least to a degree. I would say we have absolute free right to free speech here, but at least the government is restrained. This is why it is problematic in Nigeria. One of the restraints our government have in being just outright draconian is the United Nations. Right? When you think about human rights commissions and what have you, and all the human rights agencies that donate to the African government, they feel the need to, back off. When there's this activist in Nigeria, what's his name? Sowore, he was imprisoned. It was due to outside pressure that the government of the day released him. Due to outside pressure. Now imagine when the outside pressure coming is already tainted themselves. When they are fully practicing the very thing that they are telling you not to do. When the UN now believes that or write into one of its rule book, whatever convention they are going to have in the future, that it is okay to censor people for certain reasons. Whatever reason you want to give now for censorship, like what is happening to Justin Trudeau, you think it is a far cry from it becoming a UN convention and for African countries to quickly adopt it and implement it in ways that the UN did not imagine. One thing I know about Africa is that when it comes to good things about the West, they don't lead in that aspect. But when it comes to bad things from the West, they know how to take it to the farthest extreme. Right? Few years ago, I know many people don't know this. Few years ago, the Nigerian government banned Twitter. Why? Because the president of the day tweeted something that went contrary to the policy, to Twitter's policy, and his account was suspended. Now, granted, that was ridiculous. How will you do that to a sitting president of a sovereign country? That's bad. In of itself, that's bad. But because of the feelings of the president was hurt by that, Twitter was banned for almost a year. The reason why the ban was lifted was election cycle was coming in again and they wanted to campaign. And one means of campaigning was through Twitter. Now imagine if some of these policies that is going on in other countries become commonplace in the UN, and let's say they have one of their conventions and it becomes written down agreement amongst them. One of their laws defining one of the restriction of free speech. It's not hard for them to come up with this nonsense. You think African countries like that have what I call democratic dictators, you think they will not quickly adopt any of those things? That is why I talk about some of the things I see happening in the West, because I know, especially when it comes to free speech, because I know that is one law that African countries, African leaders cannot wait to exploit. Limiting free expression. Hey, they cannot wait for that one. They will love it with everything in them. They will exploit it to extents that you can. They've been doing it before. They've done it before. The reason why they kind of reduce, as in the way at the rate at which they were doing it, is because of foreign pressure. And now that foreign pressure is being taken off. Because you cannot condemn African countries for violating people's right to free speech when you do it in your own country too. You have no moral standing to do such. And it is, I'm telling you guys, if this thing continues, it's going to be the next convention. The next agreement that those in this UN will sign will be to restrict free expression. If this thing continues, it will be to restrict free expression, and African countries will not wait to domesticate that law.
Canada too, because now Canadians can't get news. It's like, look, here's the rule, Mick. This is the rule.
I agree with
All
you, Bido.
responsibility on the political front, abdicated by the average citizen, will be taken up by tyrants and used against you. And so you either take responsibility for this, which means to get involved in the political process, or you suffer the consequences. Now, you know, a young person might be thinking, well, what could I do? And I would say, you know, that's actually not a good attitude. And I mean that practically, because
Grant Abeta said, once the West falls to corruption, the corrupt leaders of Africa will come. They are already here. Like, African leaders are like dog on a leash. That's one thing you need to understand about African leaders. African leaders are dogs on a leash, Rottweilers on a leash. And the person holding the leash is Western countries. They are the ones holding that leash. When they themselves become dogs, the leash is off. The leash is off. We know the evil these people can do. We've seen it before.
what you will find if you're young, if you go volunteer for a political campaign, let's say, first of all, you're going to learn a lot. You're going to sharpen your political beliefs. You're going to learn how to put an argument forward. And then if you're competent and hardworking, you're going to find that avenues of opportunity open for you on the political front so quickly that you can hardly imagine it. And that's partly because most political organizations are chronically short of help and absolutely chronically short of competent help. And so if you stepped into the political arena, you'd learn to speak more fluently, you'd learn to put your arguments together, you'd learn to be more responsible, you'd take the responsibility onto yourself and strengthen yourself as a consequence, you'd keep the country on the straight and narrow, and you'd keep it free, and all sorts of opportunities would emerge for you. And so that's what you do. Now, people don't do that, and it's partly also because they're taught, oh, you know, the whole system is so corrupt that nothing can be done about it. It's like, well, if that's the case, you're in real trouble. And if it's not the case, take advantage of the opportunity. Get out there. Do something about it. You know, you're a citizen. It means you have some responsibility. If you're a citizen without responsibility, you're headed for slavery. Simple as that. That's how the world works.
Preach.
You don't
Preach. This is why I like Jordan Peterson. He gives practical solutions. This is the difference between Jordan Peterson and Andrew Tate, right? He calls you to responsibility. If you are a citizen without responsibility, you become a slave. That's deep. That's deep. And thank you, David. Sorry, I highlighted this. Thank you, David, for the super chat. I really appreciate it. And I'm going to leave this up here for a while so people can remember that, yes, they can throw in their super chats. I greatly would appreciate each and every one of them. I don't know why there's not much of it today, but some have actually done so. Thank you, you guys. And yes, what he's saying is also true. And this is one of the reasons why I don't buy the idea, especially what I see amongst Nigerians and many Africans. I don't buy the idea that when the system is flawed, failing system in Nigeria, people just have this apathy towards it and don't know how. They feel, oh, I cannot change this, and then they just leave it to those who are corrupt to continue destroying the system. And I'm like, you can do something about it, and one thing you can do about it is to get involved in the process, get involved in that political process, get actively involved, you know, get involved in politics. Don't leave it out and say, oh, it's a dirty game. There is no need for me to get involved in it. If you have a knack for it, by all means, get yourself involved in these things. Form interest groups. Many of these dangerous ideologies are being pushed by organizations, leftist organizations, NGOs. Form your own. Build your own. Fight for your country. Fight for your country. And here's one thing I need Westerners to understand. Most of the immigrants in your country, they don't have fighting spirit. If they did, they will not be in your country. So the person who is going to save your country is you.
stand up for yourself. Obviously, the people who will exploit you, obviously. So I don't think it is hopeless at all. I think that the fundamental bedrock of our institutions is still solidly enough in place, although it is threatened, that we don't have to walk down this increasingly authoritarian route. The Trudeau rose. You know, there's a man who couldn't even tell the truth about his marriage. What's the alternative? You know, you said, for example, you left. Well, there were business reasons for that too, because it does turn out that the United States is a place it's much more straightforward to do business in the United States. And
Yeah.
most people who are watching and listening will not know that Canadians now make 60% as much as Americans make. 60%. And the gap is growing. And that's a huge difference. We were at parity in the 1970s. It's a catastrophic difference. And Trudeau and his bloody minions, Stephen Guilbeault, prime among them, are doing, Guilbeault said today that the days of free and plentiful energy are over. Well, there's no difference between energy and
Perfect.
wealth. And there's
True.
particularly no difference between energy and wealth.
That's something that the climate activists don't understand. Energy and wealth are linked. Your energy, as in sustainable energy, is sustainable wealth. The advancement we've made in society thus far is because of energy. We didn't have what we have today when we didn't have petroleum, when we didn't have these forms of electricity. We didn't have those. The Industrial Revolution was not built on the backs of a firewood. Was not based on firewood, rather. You know. And when you attack the energy of your country, you're attacking the wealth of your country. How people don't see that is beyond me. Like, I don't really understand how people don't see that. African countries, many of them don't have when you hear this society don't even have electricity and then they are poor, you cannot make the connection. And then the quality of life is down. You can't see the connection. And then you have somebody who is bringing up policies that will make you regulate your own use of electricity, reduce the amount of power that that you have available. And you cannot see the connection of how this will lead to poverty. You are pushing this funny. Oh, God. Please, Americans and Westerners, I use God to beg you people. Don't allow life to teach you lesson. Don't allow it. So that's the mode of learning for stupid people. They wait for experience to teach them. You understand? Don't allow life to teach you a lesson that will remain in your mind forever. Bad lesson. You understand? In life, you have two options. You either learn or you become a lesson. Choose the former. That you will live and prosper.
For poor people. You want to make poor people poor, make energy expensive. Energy is work. You make work expensive, you demolish the poor, obviously. Well, I object to that. That's why I object to the climate fear-mongering apocalyptic lies, because it destroys the poor. Just so that the people who are screeching about the sky falling can feel momentarily moral about their role as planetary savior. It's like, no, to hell with you. Seriously. You leave the poor alone.
There's also definitely not one person who's screeching about the sky falling in terms of climate that's having problems affording energy. Not one of those people can't afford heat.
Yeah, well, that's exactly.
It's something so the Gabon election is dead on arrival. It's like every other African election. Nigeria election, we already knew we were hopeful, but even when everybody was hopeful about how if it would be a free and fair election, deep down I felt we all knew. We all need to take a miracle for that election for the election that was just concluded few months ago. We all knew it would take a miracle for it to be free, fair, credible. We all knew. That is why I call African leaders democratic dictators, because nobody elected them. You understand? Election in Nigeria is in Africa, for the most part, among many African countries, it's not free and fair. It's just you do it. It's a charade. It's like a show. It's a performance. You do it. People come out, they vote, and then you just throw their vote away, and then somebody comes out and read whatever result they they've already, written down before the election. And then, yeah, so person is now the winner of the election. Whoa! And that is it. All those exercise of coming out, casting your vote is just a show. It's just for that one, it's for the international community. You understand? That's one they do where people line up to vote in Africa. It's for the international community. So that the international community can see that the election was conducted. You understand? Then when they are done with that, then the winner, that the person who won before there's this joke that I remember somebody said. The joke goes like this, that somebody was like, in the UK, when an election is held, we get to know the result in 12 hours. And somebody was like, in America, when an election is conducted, we get to know the result in 2 hours. And somebody was like, in China, of course, let me give another country. Let's say, in Ireland, when an election is conducted, we get to know the result in 1 hour. And then so the Nigerian was like, in Nigeria, before an election is conducted, we know who have won. We already know who won. Before the election is conducted, we already know. Everything we are doing is just a joke. The winner of the election, we already know. And that is just why in most of these African countries, it's just a sham. That is why when they say we are going to Niger to restore democracy, I'm like, please, what democracy are you going to restore? That sham election? Those elections that are just ridiculous, rigged from the start. Everything about it is rigged, unfair, and by design so, and you all know about it. There's no foreign body that will tell me they don't know that African election, most of it is on. In fact, some of them even declare it and say this election, like the one that happened in Nigeria. International bodies was like, this election was not free and fair. Yet they recognize Tinubu as the president. They know an election, a real election did not occur in this country. They know it was broken. It was a broken system. It was a rigged system. And now that's the person they are empowering to go after Niger. So that's a segue into Nigerian politics. And then there's something someone else said about getting involved in politics as a young person and somebody who is different from the current goons, especially in Africa, and how it is really an uphill battle. But I would say it's an uphill battle worth fighting. It's an uphill battle worth fighting. You're doing it for your future. I usually tell Africans that place you are going to, you are escaping to, somebody fought to make that place what it is today. And if you keep running away and not fighting to make your own place how you want it to look like for your children, it's going to remain a desolation. Nothing about it will change. It will only keep getting worse. So you have to pay the price. You really have to pay the price. As an African, you have to pay the price. Change, freedom, prosperity does not come easy. It's not going to be like a walk in the park. It's difficult, especially with the powers that be, especially in Africa. It's not going to come easy, but you have to. You have to. You cannot keep running forever. Look at Africans. Do you not see that the West is already doomed? Especially if they don't do something about the current trend. So if you are doomed at home, doomed abroad, where is the best place for you to be doomed? Is it not at home? I don't know. Is it not at home? I ask the question again.
Right. That's exactly right. It's the people who are struggling to put food on their table and to keep their air conditioners on, to keep their heaters on in the winter. They're not playing moralistic games on the planetary savior side of things. No, they're just trying to scrabble forward with a certain degree of hope. It's appalling to see the left support this, for example, because in principle, the left is the voice of the underclass, let's say. And it's obvious that the progressives will sacrifice the poor to nature, right? To nature worship, to Gaia, this imaginary catastrophe that justifies degrowth, for example. What the hell do you think degrowth means? If you don't think that means starving poor people, you're an idiot. And you might say, well, there's too many people on the planet anyways. In which case I would say, then leave.
Well, is there anything else you think we should get into details about this? Or does that give people a good idea about what's going on? We can continue updating people, but this is the big story now. Hopefully we can get this covered by insurance because oof.
Well, insurance for a practitioner is mandatory. And insurance for a practitioner is mandatory for these reasons. And so it would be quite the situation if it turned out that the insurance which I was paying, because that was mandatory, also fails to cover this sequence of events. So we'll see about that. But I will take this as far as necessary.
Please do.
So, and like if I tell you, Mick, I am very much inclined, as you know, to, if I'm accused of doing something, to rake myself over the coals and to try to find out if I did something wrong. And I went through those allegations at Christmas in detail, and it was very stressful because I thought, you know, well, maybe there's something here, and that I went beyond the bounds of reasonable conduct. And I was very apprehensive. There were 13 charges at that point. They've dropped 7. God only knows why they dropped those 7. It's just arbitrary. But I went through all 13 in detail, hundreds of pages of allegations. And when I came out of that, I thought, well, first of all, I thought, how daft can you be to pursue allegations put forward by people who lied about the fact they were clients of mine? You know, those should have been just taken off the table instantly, obviously. You can't start by trusting the word of someone who lies in writing about something fundamental. So that was kind of a relief in some sense, right? Because I thought, well, that sheds a pretty dim light on the procedures of the college. And then I went through each allegation in turn. And I think the most damning, as I said, was the tweet in relationship to Elliot Page. That was certainly the one that caused the most public trouble. It's like, I got to tell you, kiddo, that's looking pretty good now. So, despite my proclivity to feel guilt, which is quite substantive, and despite my temperamental unwillingness to engage in conflict, I don't see, not only do I not see what I did wrong, I think what I've done on the public communication front is my responsibility as a clinician to tell the truth about what I see. And so we'll make it public in every possible way. And I'll bring to bear every single bit of public pressure I can possibly muster on this particular topic. And we will watch over the next 3 years, because that's how long it'll take, exactly how this plays out. So, and we've cordoned off our life. I can deal with this.
I wish him success. I wish Canada the best. I hope this achieves something very positive. There's something Modeliqua said, which I highlighted. They said the problem with politics is you have to be a showman, because most people will listen to politicians who say things they like and not say how they get to do it. The cost of such and the cost of the things they like. Yeah, it's true. And I get it. It's one of the politicians are like strippers, right? They make it look like you're going to go home with the ladies. No, you're not. That's how politicians are. Someone say if you believe politicians, then you believe. If you believe a politician care about you, then you should also believe that a stripper loves you. And the problem also is why politicians are able to get away with that is that a large portion of the population are uninformed, misinformed, and for the most part, painfully stupid. It's just the truth. And I'm not just saying it about the West. I'm saying it about every place, right? You see painful stupidity everywhere. So, and they exploit that. That's one of the problem of a democracy. And the universal adult suffrage. I'm not a huge fan of universal adult suffrage. I feel if we can restrict the number of people who get to vote to those who at least can demonstrate to a huge extent that they are smart enough to understand politics. Maybe take a civic test or something, and pay tax. Own property. Yeah, I'm going to take it to that. You'll be like, oh, you're going to disenfranchise the poor. Yeah, some of the problem we have today, I don't want to sound elitist, but some of the problem we have today is because certain people, especially people who don't own property, people who have no stake in the economy, get to decide how the economy is run. And what do you think they're going to decide? More welfare, more program that will increase the tax that people get to pay and impoverish the nation. That's how it works. You can only sell pipe dreams to poor people. Rich people can identify, or not just rich people, but people who are well-to-do and have been able to be an active contributor to society. I'm not talking just rich in the sense of having money. I'm talking about there's poor and then there's just somebody who is leeching on the system. People like that, when they exist in a society, they should not be allowed to vote. I strongly believe that, because that's how we end up with some of the problem we get today. When some of these people, not necessarily poor, but you see them that they're actively leeching on the system, right? When you have such people in the system and then those people get to vote, they're going to vote for any politician who promised that they're going to steal from somebody and give them something for doing absolutely nothing. That's how you end up in a system like the one we have. You see politicians make stupid promises like Nigerian politicians. We are going to create 100 million jobs. Like, if you have complete brain cells, the next question you should ask yourself is, how is that even possible? You obviously will not be able to do that. But you see people who are poor, they feel the government can't. Some people, I've spoken with Nigerians who really believe that the government have the ability to create 1 million jobs. From where? But somebody who understands how the system works, by virtue of the fact that he participates in that system, because that's how you know how the system works, is that you are actively participating in it. You're not leeching off of it. You're just a bystander. You are a contributor. You know how it works. You can deduce that, no, this does not make sense, sir. How are you going to create the job? Is it by taking my money and using it to fund ministries that are just bureaucratic organizations that just exist to make life difficult for everybody but get paid in the process? Is that how you are going to create these jobs? So, yeah. And I wish Jordan Peterson success in his fight. I hope Canada becomes a better place. Off topic, but I want to really ask this because I got to know about this recently and I found it really, really troubling. The information was like, what? I could not stop thinking about it for days. I learned that Canada pay 32% in tax. Like, your income, 32% goes to the government. Your average earning, 32% goes to the government. Is this true? And if it's true, what the hell? What the hell? When I heard it, I was like, where is the freaking protest? How is this not being challenged? Like, what the hell? What are they using that? What are they doing with that? So many questions flooded my brain. Like, what are they doing with that money? Why are they taking that amount? What, for what? For what? For what? And I'm not even living there, but I was like, for what? 32%. For what? Hey, let me tell you people, it cannot happen in this country. Okay, me. Lie. Nigerians, many of them, are other than paying value-added tax from the goods they buy on the street, in the market, of other than paying that tax, value-added tax, they've never paid any tax in their life. Many Nigerians have never, other than value-added tax rather, they've never paid any other tax in their life. Then I go to a country and they're going to take 32% of my, hey, let's say I'm a full-time YouTuber, right? In Canada, and I live in Canada. When YouTube wants to pay me every month, they take, like, I've forgotten the percentage they take as US tax, right? They take that before they give me the money. And then when it comes into Canada, Canadian government will take 32%. What is left now? God forbid. God forbid. Chimaga, God will not allow it. Lie. God forbid. And now they're even talking about a carbon tax. Only God knows what carbon tax will make the tax result into. Maybe like 40-50%. This is broad daylight robbery. Like, this is robbery. For what now? For what? For what? They say, okay, they are using it to fund education. Education that is just indoctrination camp for your children. You are paying your government to indoctrinate your children. For what? A police force that will get you locked up for protesting. Like, God forbid. Hey, God forbid. God forbid. Ha. No. How are we being overtaxed indirectly? No, we are not being, I don't know, explain to me, but I don't think we are being overtaxed indirectly. I don't think we are being overtaxed indirectly. I don't see how. Because Nigerian the government is funded by companies that they run. That's how the government is funded, especially petroleum companies. That they don't run it, but they own a substantial amount of the shares of this company. And that is what has funded the Nigerian government for a very long time. Petroleum, like, it has been funding the government of the country for a very long time. And they get to decide who gets petroleum license and the amount of commission that those people pay. Another way that the government get revenue is through custom duties, right? When people import, because Nigeria imports a lot. So custom duties is another way they make. And yes, you can say those are being distributed to the average consumer. I prefer that because even despite that, the cost of things here, the cost of things here and the cost of things abroad are not comparable. It's still higher over there than it is here. So I'm not seeing the effect of the high cost of high income duty fees or whatever. I don't see how that translates into, or maybe you say inflation, right? Like, because mismanagement of the economy that has led to, like, inflation, and we are paying higher for fuel and stuff like that. It's still not the same amount when you consider how much people in the West pay for these same things. Like, I'll be honest with you. So I really cannot see how we are paying higher in taxes indirectly. Even value-added tax does not really make the cost of a good so expensive. Or you say electricity. Even still, when it has to do with electricity, I don't think like 32% tax that an average Canadian household get to pay. And I don't think, there's no, no, you cannot compare it. I've done the maths in my head. It does not compare in any way. I don't see how. I don't see how. And this person said, you pay tax, they send billion. Exactly. Let me know. In fact, Ukraine is even this small. Let me even tell you guys in Canada, some of your taxpayer money end up in Africa. Yes. When your government is giving out foreign aid, it ends up in Africa. Not to me. I'm not the one who receives it. No, it's my government. Yeah, the same government that is bringing the continent down, your government is funding. Part of that, your 32%. Think about how just like, I'm surprised that you people are not troubled by this. Like, when I mean troubled, I mean BLM riot kind of. Okay, I'm not asking for riot. BLM protest, peaceful protest, kind of troubled. Like, this should be something to protest for 6 months. Ha. Hehe. No.
To everything else I'm doing. I've talked to Tammy, I've talked to you and Julian. My family's on my side. We're solidly committed to this. I have a good legal team. We have the money necessary to do this, and we have the connections. So if the college wants to re-educate me, they're more than welcome to try. But if they think they're going to do it in secret, they've got another think coming.
Well, with that,
I get where you're coming with this, just viral videos. I agree with you. Yes, they tax companies. Government, corporate workers pay tax. Corporate entities pay tax. Import, people who import pay custom duties. That's kind of like a tax. I get that. And I'm saying, yes, they do. And they heavily tax those companies. Yes. I get taxing those companies. Right? But here is the thing in Canada. The major corporations get taxed. Corporate tax is increased. And the income tax is also increased. There's property tax too. In Nigeria, you don't pay property tax. You don't pay. There's no property tax in Nigeria. No, think about it. No property tax. Like over there, those companies, those major corporations get taxed, and then average individual also get taxed. And also you still pay custom duties. Not like all those things that exist, all those taxes that the government is taking from major corporations in Nigeria don't exist over there. They also exist over there. And in addition to that, in Canada, you still pay value-added tax. Am I wrong? You don't pay tax for every goods you buy, as in value-added tax, which is like part of the cost of the goods you are buying. Of course, you do all of that, and you still pay income tax, and then you still pay. Like it's like at every you pay when you receive the money, you pay when you spend the money, you pay. Come on, you at every turn, the government is taking away your money. No, I don't think it's the same. I do not think it's the same. I do not think it's the same. I mean, I do not like. It's ridiculous. No, it is ridiculous. When you tax. It has been a turn off for me when I think about going abroad, and I think of the tax. I'm like, no. It's a major turn off. Like it's a deal breaker.
it was nice talking to you. Have fun at the presidential debate tonight. I like your suit.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
Isn't
I like
it
the suit too.
ridiculous?
I think the suit is.
Yeah, it's good. You stand out.
I think the suit is. He looks dapper. He looks dapper on that suit. It's really good looking. I like Jordan Peterson's taste in fashion. That's something. Maybe I should stop wearing all this my flowery t-shirt and just get me one of those suits. Yeah, so it's regulated robbery. It's robbery that is legal. It's robbery that is legal. It's bad. I am not in support of it. And I think we've come to the end of this.
Yeah. Well, I thought I'd blend in with the crowd tonight. You know, the Americans, they're very theatrical, right? Everything Americans do is theatrical. And so this presidential debate, it's theater of the best sort. And I'm down here to have an adventure, And so, and it's what I should be concentrating on. And my writing, But in for a penny, in for a pound.
That's for sure.
Yeah. Okay, kiddo.
All right, so that's the end of it. And it's raining right now in Nigeria. Ladies and gentlemen, it's raining right now. Thank you guys for staying with me thus far as I react to this. Exactly. We're still talking about the tax. People are like, yeah, you pay tax on tax on tax. Yeah, you just keep paying. I cannot see any justification for giving the government my money for absolutely nothing. You are, guys. You guys are. You need to ask your government. The first thing the government need to explain to you is what are they using that money for? Exactly what is that money being used for? And you need a very good explanation. It's your money. You need a very, very good explanation. They need to be when I spend money, when I give money to something or for something, I need a very, very good explanation. Hey, I need a serious explanation. It must make sense. So you explain it to me like I'm 5 years old, and it must make perfect sense. No, you guys need to hold your government to this. I'm like, explain this to me. Just explain it to me. Anyways, guys, thank you all for staying with me this long. Thank you all, especially for those who gave the super chats and for those who were commenting, making the live stream fun. I really appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you. Thank you for hanging with me. And I'm about to wrap this all up. I'm looking for comments that I will highlight. If you want me to highlight your comments, you can just send the super chat right now and I will just highlight it. But anyways, regardless, I will still highlight a comment that I think is fascinating and relevant to the conversation. I don't know if you can hear the rain in the background. Yeah, it is raining. Somebody said comparing infrastructures in two places look like the tax is working though. Okay, what about Dubai? Dubai paid 2% in tax. 2%. 2%. That's what Dubai pay in tax. Any infrastructure you see in any Western country, does it compare to what exists in Dubai? So how come Dubai gets to pay 2% in tax and Canadians are paying 32%? I don't think infrastructure is enough explanation. They are developed countries with wonderful infrastructure that pay far less than what people pay in the West. I think it's robbery. I don't know. Infrastructure is not it. When was the last time, like the infrastructure bill that was signed by Joe Biden? Has it been? Is it now being implemented? Do they not still have like dilapidated infrastructure? Although it is not as dilapidated as it is in Nigeria, granted, but dilapidated nonetheless. You know, that is not enough justification. What about the quality of public education, where you see certain schools that children are doing poorly, and it's your tax that is paying for that? Of course, you need to. No. I don't think the justification is infrastructure. Else, then why is Dubai prosperous? Fair point. We should bring back the days when currency was based in gold, not government's declaration. This is why they said Dubai nationalized oil. In the West, we privatize everything. I am Dubai's ability to nationalize it is because it's a smaller society. A bigger society like Western society, especially the United States, it's not possible for the government to effectively manage those things. I mean, they've also shown that they have a track record of mismanagement, right? And another thing you should put in mind is that, Dubai is a monarchy. It's not really a democracy. So I believe that in democracies, the government does not need to prove itself. What I mean is, let me explain what I mean. In monarchies, for the most part, the position of the monarch is not being contested. So he's not trying to get more power. He already has as much power as he can get. So what he tries to do is to make this economy better, right? But in a democracy, the government tries to get as much power as it can because the government always feel that their position is threatened, especially threatened by the people. So kind of how I see it. It may not be a pretty sound explanation, but it's the best I can do on such short notice. Short notice. That's fair. But I still believe that they could have paid those people well and still not have to increase tax. I mean, people being paid fairly by people who build stuff has nothing to do with tax. I mean, Elon Musk paying his workers well have nothing to do with tax. And that would be a good case for privatization, Because when you privatize this company, then you can regulate them to ensure they treat their workers well. So, yeah, I like the reference to that song. It's a really good song. Anyways, nice hanging out with you guys. I really appreciate each and every one of you who have been with me. Sorry, I like using the phrase each and every one. Let me stop using that. It's a tautology. Or is it? I don't know. But it's something that I keep hearing when I was growing up. I appreciate every one of you for sticking this long with me. I mean, 74 viewers, that's higher than what I usually get. And I am grateful for that. Thank you. And I hope this keeps getting better and better. The viewership keeps increasing. And yeah, I hope this grows. Please like, share, the regular YouTube stuff. And thank you. Thank you. And also, I keep forgetting. Follow me on Instagram. Follow me on Instagram. The link to the Instagram is in the description. Check it out. I have somewhere that I'm going, and I tweet pretty interesting stuff, if I do say so myself. And now that the rain is getting louder, I think it's best to bring this live stream to an end. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful day.